Hoes over bros? Or bros over hoes? What's going on, fellow neighbors? This is Logan Myers from Cinephellas.com reviewing Nicholas Stoller's sequel to Neighbors, Neighbors 2, Sorority Rising. And if you remember the first film, I reviewed it a few years back, and it was hilarious. Just the dynamic between Zac Efron and Seth Rogen, which is really comedic. I was surprised at how good and how well they play off each other in the first film. And if you haven't seen it, it's a fraternity that moves in next door to Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne. They're married, Mac and Kelly Radner. The frat moves in next door, and it's ran by Zac Efron's character Teddy. And of course, all the debauchery that goes down, and the frat partying at all hours of the night, and waking up Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne's baby. And it just was an all-out war against the family and the frat. And there was a lot of, great comedic sequences, and the frat where they had a Robert De Niro party where they're all dressed up as different characters from Robert De Niro movies. And it was just all out a great film, and it was just a great comedy that I really enjoyed. So safe to say I was really excited for this sequel. With comedy sequels, they don't really own up to the first film. They don't have the same substance. It's kind of dried out. I can only think of a handful of comedy sequels that I really enjoy. One being Wayne's World 2, great classic 90s flick of my childhood. But with this film, I went into the movie not really expecting much, but I was pleasantly surprised, and it was actually a really good film, a really good comedy. And it pulled at your heartstrings a little bit, You felt good after you walked out of the theater. So the overall premise of this movie is not a fraternity, but a sorority moves in next door to Mac and Kelly's house. And they're trying to sell their house, and it's an escrow, which is an ongoing joke in the film because Kelly and Mac don't understand what escrow is. And essentially it's when you're selling your house, you have a buyer, and they have 30 days to make sure everything's up to par, and if it's not, they can pull out of the sale and basically screw out the owners of the house. So that's when the whole sorority comes into play. The sorority is ran by Chloe Grace Moretz. You've seen her in a bunch of films. She's in a lot of horror flicks. She was in that Carrie remake. But she's a good actress, a young actress, and it was cool, to have her as the head of the sorority in this role. And she starts a new sorority. She's trying to pledge in another one at her college. And of course, sororities, they can't party. It's a rule, I guess. Only frats can party. So she's like, screw that. I'm going to start my own sorority with my friends, and we're going to party all the time. We just got to find a place to do that. So they found this house that's abandoned next to Kelly and Mac, and they rent it out, and they start their sorority, and all hell breaks loose. And they start their sorority, and they meet up with Zac Efron's character Teddy. As you remember from the first film, he's in this film he's kind of lost in life. He's working as a model. There's not much work. All of his friends, Dave Franco's character, they all moved on, and getting married and have real-time jobs, and being adults, and Zac Efron's kind of stuck in limbo. Like, what do I do with my life? I'm middle 20s. I'm still acting like I'm an 18-year-old kid, that all I want to do is have fun, while everybody else is growing up and being adults. So he's kind of stuck in limbo, gets kicked out of his place, and he ends up back at the old house he used to live at that was abandoned at the time. He's just hanging out there, and that's where he meets Chloe Grace Moretz and the sorority. So he's given the job to kind of oversee the sorority, to build them up, really, because they're kind of small at first, and get some money into the house and help them throw parties where they're actually profitable and they can pay their rent. And Kelly and Mac see Teddy next door with these girls, and they're freaking out. They're like, what the hell is he doing here? From the first movie, they had that all-out battle, and they didn't get along. They're at each other's throats, and the cops are called, and yada yada yada. So they're freaking out because their house is in escrow. They want to sell it they already bought a new house. If they don't sell the house they're currently living in, they're going to have 2 mortgages, which is just a financial crisis, essentially. So they're doing everything they can to sell their house so they can move into their dream home out in the suburbs. And things don't go as planned with Teddy and the sorority. They kind of get fed up with him because he's too much of a dad or an adult. He's trying to be, smarter about their decisions because of, the first movie where he, gets arrested has a record now because of the scenario with the Radners next door. So he's trying to be smarter about their decisions and making sure they're not getting into trouble. I mean, they can have fun, but they don't want to, get cops involved and whatnot. Of course, that doesn't work out, and Zac Efron gets fired from this position in the sorority. And, all he wants is a place to belong. He wants that friendship and that family. And he gets together, with the Radners, as you can kind of guess. And they're like, we need to stop these girls because we need to get out of our house. So that comes into play like the first film. And they have a lot of the same substance and kind of jokes and ways they're going at each other, such as pranks. And there's a sequence where the sorority steals Mac and Kelly's phones and acts like, Mac's texting Kelly and like, we need to talk, we need to break up, but it was all the sorority, so it causes this huge clusterfuck of drama, and it was pretty good. It was funny as hell. In this movie, we also get Jimmy, which is Mac's best friend, played by Ike Barinholtz. He was been a lot of comedies. Most notorious for Mad TV from the 90s, which I loved. He was hilarious. He's hilarious in this movie, and he always has those witty comebacks. So Jimmy and Mac and Kelly and Beth and Teddy, they all come together and they think of an idea to go to this huge college party, steal the sorority's weed. Essentially is what they're trying to do. So the sorority won't have money, and they won't be able to pay rent, so they'll be kicked out of the house next door. So it's this whole funny sequence. They're at this, I guess what you call it, college party, and Zac Efron's like twerking and like dancing with the shirt off, to create a decoy while they, Seth and Rose Byrne go and steal the weed from their little booth at this party, and it was hilarious. And it goes in this whole sequence. Ike, or Jimmy, is dressed up as a clown, and he looks all twisted, and I was like, what the fuck, dude? And so they essentially get the weed, and they take off, and it's just this whole like drawn out 15-minute sequence in the movie. It's like slow motion of them jumping over these tables with like hot dogs and all this like food, and it was probably one of the best parts of the movie. It was really funny. And now, of course, after this happens, the sororities, like, obviously our neighbors took our weed, so we need to get back at them. So the rest of the movie is them like kind of going back and forth with these different pranks and really trying to outdo each other, like in the first film. And Zac Efron and Seth Rogen's characters come together, and they're trying to outdo Chloe Grace Moretz, and for the most part they do that. She's pretty witty though. She always like one step ahead of them. Like they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna get her this time, but not really. I'm like, she's always one step ahead. They try to shut off the power next door, and they have a backup generator so the lights, so their electricity doesn't go out in this party. And you come to the end of the movie, after the whole first hour and a half of them going, the sorority and the family going at each other, it's all about friendship and it's all about family, and there's actually an underlying story to it, and it's not just some raunchy comedy, which it kind of is, but there's a deeper meaning to it, which I enjoyed. Because every now and then it's great to have a raunchy comedy, in a world with superhero movies and things like that. It's just great to go to the theater and laugh for 2 hours, and that's what I did. And, that's what I liked about it. And with an underlying story, like in the first film, it's all about friendship and coming together through the hard times. Like in the film where they're going through this financial crisis, you come together, you put your heads together, and you always have those friends and family there to back you up. And that's what I got out of this film. Even with the craziness and all the pranks and all the jokes, it was really good. It was a good concept. It was much like the first one, and it was, I think even a little better than the first. It's close. It's hard to say, but I really enjoyed it. Obviously, at the end, I'm not going to spoil any more than I already have, but you can guess what happens to Sorority and the Radners. For the most part, you know, just across the board, there's a lot of good acting. There's just the great comedic sense. And I think the standout of this film was Zac Efron. Everything he touches now, it's been really good. He can do drama, he can do comedy, he can do a lot of different genres, and he's kind of overlooked. But he's actually a standout actor, in my opinion, and I thought he was great in this film. He plays a dumb jock, but he also has feeling of wanting to belong. You know, his friends are older, moving on with their lives. He's not, so he's just trying to fit in life. And I thought he was great. You know, Seth Rogen is always Seth Rogen in every movie he's in, but it works, and he's hilarious, and he does it well. And Rose Byrne is always excellent. She's the foul-mouthed mom and wife to Mac, and she's just great in this film, just like the first one. And it's hilarious that she has a vibrator throughout the movie that their little kid plays with. They're like, oh no, it's a little toy, you know, it's some character, and like everybody's like, no, that's a vibrator. But that's a raunchiness to this comedy. It throws in little aspects throughout the whole movie, just little spiels here and there that just make you laugh and get the overall premise of the movie with a heartfelt ending. And it really worked, and I really enjoyed it. I'm definitely recommending Neighbors 2 Sorority Rising to all our followers. It's a raunchy comedy, but it has substance. And it really ties in well with the first film. There's a lot of cameos from the first film in this one. And I think you'll really enjoy it if you're in for a good laugh. Definitely go check it out. I'm giving Neighbors 2 a 4 out of 5 hair pieces. And until next time, cheers!